So our topic tonight is
It's
if I just thought to give tzedakah, do I have to give it? Now, uh, this is uh, actually a very practical topic because it is not uncommon for somebody, let's say when somebody comes into a shul to collect, for one of the participants in the shul to think, oh, yeah, I'm going to give to that guy. Then let's say the guy doesn't show, or let's say the guy skips you, and you already thought to give him, and you even thought to give him how much, a certain amount. Do you have to go run after him and give him that? Or let's say there's an appeal, and and you think something. I'm going to give such and such amount of money to that appeal, and for argument's sake, you do it in a very decisive manner. You say, I'm definitely doing it, whatever. Um, uh, do you have to give it? In other words, is that uh, neder tzedakah? Is that vow to give tzedakah that was not verbalized create an obligation to give? There is an additional question that some ask. Maybe even uh, the money becomes tzedakah money just by thinking. We'll describe why you might have said such a thing, but what we're going to do it is, God willing, through a tshuva, through a responsa of Rav Cook, Rav Avram Yitzchak Cohen Cook, in Dat Kohen, and we'll discuss some of the issues that come up. Now, just a very interesting thing about the graphic that came up. Uh, okay, I every now and then, instead of a photo for the graphic, I just find the source that we're based on, and I try to find some very, very old editions, so it's interesting. So sure enough, I looked to the Shulchan Aruch and I tried to find what's the earliest available edition of the Shulchan Aruch that I can get my hands on. So in HebrewBooks.org, I saw the Venice edition. So I go to the Venice edition. The Venice edition is before the Ramah was added. So I didn't find the Ramah, and the piece that we wanted from the Shulchan Aruch in Yerodea, Hilchos Tzedaka, is actually from the Ramah. There is a piece in the Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat, but and I wanted Yerodea Reish Nun Ches, which is the Ramah at the end of the Siman there. So it turns out I had to go to um, the newer edition of the Shulchan Aruch when they already added the Ramah. Now here's our tshuva of Rav Kook. Let me just make it larger just in case somebody's on a phone or something. Okay. Um, and what's interesting, this question was asked, Lichvod Rava Chassid HaNichbad, Moreno Rav Avram Yitzhak, Professor Vilkamirson Shlita. So I don't know who this is, but this is interesting. Um, the last time I think we did a tshuva of Rav Kook was a couple times ago. It was actually from an art professor. Now, um, Tafresh Pechet is 1928. Shalom Rabbi Dvar Shelato im nadar belibo velo hotzi befiv im nikra neder. If he made a vow in his heart and he didn't verbalize it, is that considered a neder? Nira shekavanatoi, so he's telling the question. Apparently, your intent is al neder shel tzedaka. Kamo shomachich sof alashon shel shelato im nadarti stam ba'avur shenadar. Now, when you go up for an aliyah, so the standard procedure is when somebody's called up for an aliyah, so he's asked to give a donation. And so they and then and near the end of it's bavur nadar, and sometimes they say the amount. Um, Sometimes they say bavur nadar. Now, common practice nowadays is often to say bali neder, uh, but he he said, Bavur, in the Mishabech there it was Bavur Shenadar, Velo Perasti Kamanino there. I did not make it clear how much. Ach belibi amarti lishloach $3. In my heart, I said I'm going to send $3. 1928, $3. Wherever he is, I'm not 100% sure where the questioner was. Imar neder o lo. Is that considered a neder or not? Now, this is a major machlokas haposkim that appears in two places. One is the Ramah in Reish Nun Chet, and the other is the Shulchan Aruch in Choshen Mishpat Reish Yud Bet. Now, one important sugya is Shavuos Daf Chavav. Let me just pull that up for a moment. And this is where it all begins. Shulchan Aruch says like this. Let me just share this while we're at it. Now, again, there is a whole discussion here, but at the end of the sugya, the Gemara quotes a brisa: "Motzas vasecha tishmor ve'asisa." That which comes out of your lips, you should make sure that you do it, fulfill it. Ein li ela shotzi bisvaso. That's only if you verbalized it. Gamar b'libo minayin. But if you decided in your heart, meaning you made a decision, gamar b'libo minayin, how do you know that you must act on that? You must put it into practice. Talmud lomar, the Torah says, kol nadiv lev. So that pasuk, kol nadiv lev, Rashi says, is referring just a minute. I'll do that afterwards. First of all, the original pasuk is about donating to bring a korban. The sugya is discussing nidarim and shvuas that you have to verbalize them, and it quotes the pasuk of levate bisvasayim, that you have to verbalize it. So in the end of the sugya, the Gemara says, wait a second, isn't there a brisa that says you don't have to verbalize it? And the Gemara says, Shani Hasam Dichsiv Kol Nadiv Lev. That case of making a vow to bring a korban, there the pasuk says Kol Nadiv Lev. Anybody who is generous in their heart. When it's talking about nidarim and shvuas, taking a vow to prohibit something, or taking a shvua to either do something or not do something, those personal prohibitions or obligations that we take, a neder or a shvua, those need to be verbalized. But when you're donating to bring a korban, they don't have to be verbalized. Their generosity in the heart is enough. We welcome Zev. So the Gemara says that's different. There it says Kol Nadiv Lev. Ask the Gemara v'nigmar mina. We should learn out from donations to bring a korban to the kinds of nedarim of prohibiting things on oneself. Answers the Gemara, mishum dehave truma v'kachim shnei ksuvim habayim ke'echad v'chol shnei ksuvim habayim ke'echad ein melamdim. Truma and kachim, by both of them, if it's done in the heart, that's enough. And when the Torah has, this is one of the principles, midot she'atorah nidreshes bahem, and that is, shnei ksum aboim ke'echad ein melabdim. When the Torah tells you the same thing in two different areas, so it's to tell you that it's restricted to those two areas. What's the idea? The idea is that if the Torah wanted to tell you that it applies all over the place, it would say it once, and then you would make a binyanav. You would learn from that as a paradigm for all similar cases. If the Torah said it a second time, apparently the Torah is not building a binyanav, and it's restricted to those cases. That's the logic behind, apparently, this concept of shnei tzuma boim ke'achad ein melamdim. However, that all over the place is a machlokas. Hanich leman damar ein melamdim. That only works out according to the approach of ein melamdim. El leman damar melamdim make ma'ikal lememra. According to the approach that sometimes the Torah does say something twice, and we extrapolate from there to all similar cases. 3 times no, but twice yes. That's the Amanda Amar Shnei Ksuvam Boim Ke'echad Melamdim. What are you going to say there? Why don't we say that by Nedarim and Nedavos, by Nedarim and Shvuos, you shouldn't have to verbalize? Answers the Gemara: Havechulin v'kachin v'chulin mikachim lo gamrinan. Now the simple thing is that Nedarim and Shvuos are chulin. Those are, you're prohibiting chocolate on yourself. You're prohibiting, you're taking a vow that you're going to do. You're going to give a certain amount of money to your son, whatever. You're going to eat an apple, whatever it is. Those are not. That's not the world of kachim. The world of kachim are things like karbanos and truma. That seems to be the simple thing, and you can't extrapolate from there to other areas. Now, if you look in Rashi and you look in Tosos, you'll find that the pasuk that they speak about for truma is different. Rashi says, Trumas maleches hamishan ksiva kol nadiv lev heviu. When it talks about truma, it means donating to the Mishkan. And there it says, kol nadiv lev heviu. All those people that were generous in the heart, they brought. Because Rashi understands that kol nadiv lev, the pasuk that is quoted in the Gemara, applies to both truma and kachim. And kachim, it says, v'chol nadiv lev olot. Anybody who was generous in their heart, they offered burnt offerings. So that's the way Rashi learns it. Tosfos says, he brings the pasuk of kol nadiv lev olot by kachim, but by truma he brings v'nechshav lachem trumaschem. That truma can be taken by machshava, truma can be taken by thought. So we see a machlokas in Rashi, between Rashi and Tosfos, about whether the pasuk that it brings for truma, thought being sufficient, is the pasuk about the dedication of the Mishkan, or it's the pasuk about taking off truma gedola, taking off the tithes from grain. Now, if you look in let's go back to our tshuva now, and hold on to that for a moment. Benidrei tzedaka hi machlokas ben aposkim. There's a machlokas aposkim whether nidrei tzedaka, donating tzedaka, not korbanos or truma, and not nedarim and shvuos, but in the sense of vows and oaths, but a neder to donate tzedaka, do you have to im kishagamra b'libo ein tzarich los b'bisvasav? Do we apply that Gemara, that brisa about not having to verbalize it? Does that apply to tzedakah? In Yoredei Sim and Rishon Chetzif Yud Gimel Katzav Rama Bahaga, the Rama wrote Chashav B'libo. Here's the Rama. Chashav B'libo litein eza davar litzedakah chayav l'kayim machshavto. If you thought in your heart to give something to tzedakah, a poor guy, a poor collector comes into the shul, and he's collecting, he's going from person to person. You said, and you look at him, you see his letter, you say, you know something, I'm going to give that guy $25. So you didn't say anything out loud, you thought it in your heart. So according to this first approach in the Ramah, Chayiv l'kayim machshavto. You have to keep what you thought. Ve'in tzarech hamir. You don't have to verbalize it. Ella dimamar. What's the deal with saying it? Imamar kofino to l'kayim. If a person actually said, let's say there's an appeal and everybody's donating stuff, and Simchas Torah, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, whatever it is, and somebody says, I'm $500. So then they can force you to keep it, to donate it, and keep your word. Whereas if you just thought it, well, that's your personal obligation. Nobody else can force you because nobody else knows. Now, and that's V'advarim novim mimakor Rabbeinu Rishonim. That comes from the Rishonim, and when it says the Rishonim, it's the Mordechai. The Mordechai brings that. Amnam kasav sham v'yesh omrim dim lo hotzi bisvas b'fivenu klum. That if he didn't verbalize it, it's nothing, and that's the Rush and others. And he says here in the Beis Yosef Amnam mevi b'shem Maharik the Rush b'makom acher pasak gam ken lahachmir bazeh u'masayim v'ayikar kisvar Rishona. There seems to be a steer between the Tshuvas Harash, where he says Nidrei Tzedaka are considered chulin, and you have to verbalize, otherwise it's not obligatory, and a Rush in his Hilchos Harash, where he seems to say that Nidrei Tzedaka are like Truma and Kodshim. In my going through material on this, I saw somebody say what struck me, that the machlokas between the poskim about whether Nidrei Tzedaka are like Truma and Kodshim on the one hand, or they're like Nedarim and Shavuos on the other, it seems to be an argument between Rashi and Tosfos. Because look at the pasuk that Rashi brought. Rashi brought the dedication of the Mishkan, whereas Tosfos brought taking off Truma. And perhaps we can suggest the following, that when the Gemara talks about the difference extrapolating from Truma and Kodshim, it could be that it's not the severity of Truma and Kodshim, but it's the donation aspect of Truma and Kodshim. There's a different dynamic when you're making a neder or making a shvua. You're prohibiting something, or you're obligating something. I'm creating an obligation, a shvua, or I'm creating a prohibition. Whereas with offering a sacrifice or dedicating something to the Mishkan, it's generosity, and generosity takes place in the heart. Whereas creating an Isser, creating a mitzvah, that's something that is created by the words. Miftah bituis vasayim. So the issue isn't so much the holiness of Truma and Kodshim, but it's the generosity involved in donating a korban or donating to the Mishkan. Whereas Rashi seems to be talking about Truma Gadola, and there it seems to be more focusing on the fact that it's something that has Kedusha. Now it's true, and I think you find in the Rabbeinu Hananel, he says explicitly that because Kodshim and Truma is so severe, it takes hold even on something that was just thought, as opposed to Nedarim and Shavuos, which are as important as they are, but it only takes a hold when you actually verbalize it. Meaning, so then it seems like a matter of degree. Truma and Kodshim apply even to thought, which is a lesser expression, and for Nedarim and Shavuos, you have to have a stronger expression. Whereas I believe in Rashi, the issue isn't so much a matter of degree, but it's a matter of kind. There's a difference between prohibition or creating an obligation than generosity. Generosity is in the heart, and the pasuk Nadiv Lev is both for Truma and for Kodshim. It's not that Nadiv Lev is for Kodshim and V'nechshav lachem, like Tosfos says, is for truma. So I believe that that seems to be the crux of the machlokas, whether whether generosity and donations essentially take place in the heart, or something that is very high level of sanctity even takes hold if it was only done in the heart. I think those are the two approaches, and the nafkamina, the practical ramifications, the practical difference between these two approaches is, where do nidrei tzedaka fall? Are they part of the world of generosity? That's, I think, what Rashi says. And by the way, the Mordechai, I didn't find it. I did some searches to try to find it in Chuvas Rashi, but he quotes Chuvas Rashi. He quotes a responsa by Rashi there, that and I didn't find somebody telling me where that responsa appears, but he quotes a responsa of Rashi that that nidrei tzedaka are like nidorim and nidavos, the korbanos. So that was very strong. That it's and then it's Rashi l'shitaso. It's Rashi consistent, and you have a similar thing with Tosfos. There's 2 days in Tosfos about whether a fast, accepting a fast, can be done in the heart or not. So so it could be that there's consistency there. Now, the case that happens in Choshen Mishpat is as follows. If a person bought, what is something about donations doing in Choshen Mishpat? Well, it says like this: Kana karka adaisa shiasenu hegdish. You bought land with the intention that you're going to make it into hegdish. Excuse me. Velo hotzi mipiv klum. You didn't say anything. There are those that say that if he decided in his heart to give it to tzedakah, he has to give it. There is somebody who says, this is the Rush, excuse me. Even though it says kol nadiv lev olos, there is such a thing of a donation in the heart for sacrifices. Chulin mikachim lo yalfinon. You don't learn out chulin, which he would hold that nidrei tzedakah are chulin. You don't learn it out from kachim. V'ha'inan today kol hegdish yesh lo din chulin. Today this is the Rush. This is right from this is pulled right out of the Rush. And today all hegdish, what we call hegdish, or what people would call hegdish in the times of the Rishonim, that's still chulin. That's still non-sanctified. Shein hegdish atal bedek abayis. When we say hegdish nowadays, again, they use this expression. It's not to the Beis Hamikdash. Ve'enu ela l'tzedaka. It's only tzedaka. V'chol shelo otzi b'srasav ve'enu kluv. If you didn't verbalize it, it doesn't. It's nothing. Ve'arama b'muskar sham siyem, and the Rama concludes v'yesh lehachmir kisvara yishori. You should be machmir, meaning to treat it as what you thought b'machshava does apply. Ve'ayin b'yeradei sof siman reish and chet, and that's where the Rama brings his the same 2 days. Now, this is a nice klal here. What he writes now. Again, I'm so struck by the clarity of Rav Kook's tshuvas. It seems like the Mechaber also is Machmir. Why? Because he first said V'yesh Omrim with regards to that if you just thought it, you're obligated. And he said by the Svara Shnia, Yesh Misha Omer. He said it in the singular. Well, when there's a something that Yesh Omrim in the plural, as opposed to a Yesh Misha Omer, which is the Shitas Harash, which it sounds like it's more of a minority opinion. So it seems like the Shulchan Aruch also is telling you to keep what you just thought. So and he points out, even though you'll find that when the Shulchan Aruch brings two approaches, So there are people who try to come up with rules, whether the first one or the second one is the one that's kovea. But here, when he says one yesh omrim and the other one is yesh mishe omer, well, one is a majority and one is a minority, and that's simple, that's straightforward. Now, the end of the tshuva, he distinguishes between three different kinds of cases. One case is where a person just made a neder, and he said, I'm making a donation. Well, that we try to figure out what's the standard donation. That's one case. A second case is when a person made a donation, but he doesn't remember how much it was. Well, then we try to figure out up to what point is it very clear that that's what it was, and what point is the question mark. So you give to say, oh, it definitely wasn't more than X. So then you have to give up to X. A third case is when you said you're going to give, and you thought the amount. Now again, the cases we've been talking about have been even more intense, where you only thought to give. But the case of the questioner was where he said, Bavur Shenadar, and in his mind he thought $3. So those are three separate cases, he says. Don't confuse these three different cases. What you just said, when you didn't have any amount in mind, you just said, I'm going to give an ender. Well, then we got to find out what's the standard. If you said an amount, but you forgot it, we got to try and assess it. But if you said you're going to give and you thought an amount, you have to keep your amount, and that's the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. Just a minute. Let me just make sure that I don't. Here we are. And that's what he said. When you thought in your heart $3, zenikra mafarish. That's making it clear, because you had a clear thought of how much. V'tzarach litain keperusha shlosha dalim. You have to give those $3. V'udomem mamash l'madekayim alam b'shulchan aruch reish yud dim haya b'libo lindor pas chitim ve'otzi b'sfasav pastam aser b'shel chitim levad. If you had in your mind pas chitim by a normal neder, and you just said pas, you're obligated in chitim. So same thing here. You said you're going to donate, you verbalized it, but you thought 3. So the same thing should apply. And then, of course, he ends, I couldn't figure out this word. Kaf nun he yud. It's kin nefesh ha, I don't know. V'nefesh yidido, doresh lo mo'atov, be'ava rabba mehar kodesh miRushalayim, aver mitzak hakohen cook. So, at the end of the day, the ruling seems to be that if you thought with clarity, again, the Aruch HaShulchan points out that it have to be a clear decision that I'm going to give, so that you're obligated. And there's the minority opinion of the Rosh that apparently that's the minority opinion, because one is Yesh Omri, one is Yesh Mishe Omer, that here we would apply Chuli Mikotchim Lo Gamrinan. We don't learn it out, and I believe when you get to the core of the sugya, the issue is whether it's generosity that's in the heart, or that in things that involve Kedusha, they take hold even on things that are in the heart. Those, I think, are the two ways of learning that Gemara, and the practical difference is Nidrei Tzedaka. Just want to point out that this is the realm of donations and the realm of vows and oaths. And in the realm of vows and oaths, you have to verbalize. In the realm of donations, that's a machlokes. And in the realm of korbanos and truma, so that takes hold even by machshava. We should not. There are a number of different realms where you could ask your question. You could ask the question: what's the status of just thinking? So, for instance, we have a principle with regards to uh, contracts and conditions in contracts. Dvarim shebalev einam dvarim. The Gemara says if somebody took sold a house and it was clear from context that it was because he wants to make aliyah, and so he sold his house in wherever, New Jersey, uh, and then he ended up not making aliyah, and he comes back and he wants his house back, and he says to the purchaser, he says, "Listen, we clearly only sold uh, in order to make aliyah, and the aliyah didn't work out, so therefore we're going to we want our house back." Nothing going, because Devarim Shebalev Einam Devarim, something that you didn't verbalize in a contract, you didn't write it into the contract, so it doesn't take hold. You didn't verbalize it. In the area um, of mitzvahs, so there's a whole machloket about mitzvahs strichos kavana or ain't strichos kavana. This, I thank Rabbi Hirschfeld for reminding me that this topic is related to the level of machshava. Is there a machshava component of every mitzvah? That every mitzvah, unless you have kavanah to do the mitzvah, to do it as a mitzvah, not necessarily in some highfalutin kavanah, but just the kavanah to do a mitzvah, do you fulfill a mitzvah, or is the focus of the mitzvah the act, or is the mitzvah an act and an intent? With regards to mitzvahs that we have to say something, so that's a sugya in Berachos where we have the topic of hirhur kedibur damri. Do we say that thinking something itself is like speaking it out, or it's not like speaking it out? But those are other realms. There's the realm of contracts, or that's the realm of mitzvahs to say something, or that's the realm of is there intent in mitzvahs? Here we're talking about the realm of nidrei tzedaka, the obligation to give tzedaka. So that's the topic. So there's two stages. One stage is, what about just thinking it? And the second is, what about saying something general but thinking something specific? So that might even be just overly clear what the questioner asked. But once again, that's a very practical case that so it probably makes sense for a person always to, in their mind, even in their mind, bli neder it, not to intend, make it very clear that they don't intend to make any nedarim. Anyways, that's what I wanted to share. Rav Kook's tshuva to Rav Avram Yitzchak, Professor Vilka Meerson, and getting to that big machlokas that's brought in the Ramah in Reish Yordei Reish Nun Chet in Hilchos Tzedaka, and in the Shulchan Aruch in Choshen Mishpat Simon Reish Yud Bet, where somebody bought land and intended to make it hektish in quotation marks, again, to donate it to the poor, not to the Beis HaMikdash. Anyways, that's what I wanted to share with you. A very, very, very relevant and very, very common topic.